Week 11, Occupy fam. What's going on? We're here to talk DFS. It's Walid. I'm here with Brian. And by now, you guys should know just the tempo of things. We jump into it, and where do we start? Good old betting odds. What's good, Brian?
What's up, Lee? Yeah, interesting week from a DFS perspective. This Sunday slate is going to be, I think, trash is a nice way to put it. We have just a couple touchdown or more favorites, and then just one total over 50 points. We have two 4 o'clock games. We have a bunch of totals under 45 points. It's going to be interesting. I think cash lines are going to be extremely low, but the last time I said that, the Millionaire Maker winner had like 300 points, so we'll see.
So the Browns, obvious 11-point favorites against the Dolphins, and then the Saints 8.5 against the Panthers. Do you see these two teams kind of tilting cash games?
I thought so, just looking at the spread, and we can kind of tie this section with the next section together, the highest owned projected players. It looks like a lot of the highest owned guys are from the highest total game, that Tampa Bay and Atlanta game, whereas we don't see too many of the Saints or Browns players in the top projected players. We have Alvin Kamara, a top projected running back, and we have Michael Thomas, a top projected owned receiver. But other than that, no guys from Cleveland in there, no Baker, no Chubb, no Odell. And then the Saints, or on the other side, Carolina and Miami, don't really see any guys either.
Yeah, and I mean, price adjusts, right? Like, I think Nick Chubb is 8,200 on FanDuel, 8,100 on DraftKings.
Wow.
But yeah, as you were saying, the team totals, Tampa Bay, Atlanta, 51.5 points. That's where a lot of the energy is going towards. Seattle, Philly, a game that looks poised to be a shootout, 48 points. Panthers, Saints, 47 points. Raiders, Jets, 46.5 points. And then the Cowboys and Patriots, 45.5.
Yeah, normally we don't even discuss games in that range, right? We never even talk about games 45 points, but here they're just two games, 48 points or higher. My first question to you is this Tampa Bay and Atlanta game. We talked about it on the season-long episode about Atlanta's resurgence on defense with Dan Quinn giving up the play-calling duties. Mm-hmm. Can we trust that game, especially a divisional matchup, to be the highest scoring on the slate?
Good question, man. Like, I can see it go both ways. But for the purpose of fantasy, I think you'll be okay, right? I think we know who the guys are. We know Mike Evans and Godwin, and we know Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley. So I think those four guys are going to be okay. But it very well might not be the highest scoring total.
That's
Second
true.
division showdown,
Right. Does it surprise you that Brian Hill is back in this group of highest projected owned running backs after last week's disappointment?
No, just given his price, right? Like 5,500 on FanDuel, 4,900 on DraftKings. They're still the home favorite, and for what it's worth, like he still had 3 targets last week, 2 targets the week before. And the volume's there. So no, it doesn't really surprise me, but it does look like kind of a sort of trap matchup.
Yeah, and I think people will, just to reiterate his opportunity last week, he also had 6 red zone touches. He had a few carries inside the 5, had a touchdown overturned by penalty.
Yep.
So, the volume was there. And I really think, I talked about it with Moose last night on the Twitch stream, I think that was probably the lowest range of outcomes for Hill.
Right, 100%. He had 4, like you said, 6 red zone targets, but 4 red zone carries. He had 4 red zone carries the week before, and you just look at the volume. It's for that price, you're just not going to find it elsewhere.
That's true. That's a good point. What about the Eagles game? Miles Sanders, literally same exact spot as Hill. We assume with Jordan Howard potentially out again. Cheap backup running back thrust into a starting role, high total game. Are we going back to, do we think they can adjust and actually give him the ball some when he's on the field?
I'm not counting on it. They seem like, last week, what did he have? 11 carries. He had 4 targets. Didn't do much. But his upside, let's call it upside per price, is solid, but definitely not like a cash game type of guy.
That's fair, I think.
In my opinion.
No, I mean, it's hard to play him in cash after, he had, not that many touches last week. So I get it. Other high-owned projected running backs that we have, Leonard Fournette, who the team admitted need to get him the ball more this week, and we've seen how that's worked out for a lot of players this year. So I expect about 40 touches for Fournette. Josh Jacobs on the road this time, but in a soft matchup with the Jets. But the Jets, Lee, they're really tough against the run, so I'm not sure how I feel about Jacobs as a high-owned running back either.
It is. It's one of like similar to Tampa Bay's defense,
Yep.
right? Where we kind of know where offenses are targeting against them, but I mean, Josh Jacobs has been a guy that's been pretty active in the receiving game. So I hear you. He's not cheap, right? He's 8,000 on FanDuel and 7,400 on DraftKings. So I kind of prefer to fade that. But I mean, he is a workhorse back.
That's true too. I mean, he's becoming more game script proof, and it's not like we expect the Raiders to get blown out here by the Jets. So I get that too. We kind of skipped over the highest owned projected quarterbacks: Matt Ryan, Jameis Winston in that high total Atlanta Tampa Bay game. And then there's
It's like Winston is here every week. Every week we talk about it, and it makes me feel better for just being suckered into it.
I know it's like, well, everyone else feels that way too, so it can't be that bad of an idea, right? So, but yeah, I mean, if you're stacking this game, it really depends on what Winston shows up. If we get the bad Winston like we did last week, it's gonna be a one-sided matchup. If we get good Winston, this game shoots out and becomes a GPP winner. So,
Totally.
certainly makes sense.
And for what it's worth, I think it's easy to kind of dog on Winston, but he's been decent, right? Like,
Oh yeah,
if we're talking DraftKings, he's produced 20+ point performances the last now 5 weeks. I mean, you're looking at a dude who, even when he throws 4 interceptions, he'll get you 300 yards and somehow waddle for 30 yards. So he'll make up for it. And Matt Ryan, right? Like he's coming in his own and more of what we expected earlier in the year. Who do you like more between those two guys? I know the model likes Matt Ryan, but ownership is going to tilt his way, right?
I would think so. Without digging too deep into it, I still think Winston. I would prefer more. But again, this is a very first look at this. I don't mind either guy, but in tournaments, I think as we'll get into the sneaky stack section of the show, I think there are probably some other quarterbacks I would be looking at.
Let's talk receivers. Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, obviously really popular. Julio hasn't scored a touchdown since week 3. Is he due for a blow up here?
It's funny because as we talk about our buy low and underperforming receivers, Julio just misses the cut every week. It's because he puts up enough yards and receptions that he doesn't necessarily count as underperforming. Yeah, but no touchdown since week 3. That's right on par for Julio. In this matchup, the one thing he did miss practice today with a foot injury. We'll see if that is just veteran rest or he's had foot issues in the past. If he somehow is limited or missed, then Calvin Ridley's stock and ownership will skyrocket.
100%. So that's I'm not concerned about it yet, but definitely something to keep your eyes out on. And I mean, Michael Thomas can. Yeah, what else can you say about this guy?
He single-handedly kind of rebukes the pay up for running backs in cash games, right? Like even if he's 10K, like he's one of the safest players you could possibly get. So paying up for him at receiver, while I would never advocate for that in cash games, it's hard not to given his target volume.
Yeah, I mean, he seems like a sure lock for double. I mean, he's had double-digit targets the last 6 weeks now, and I mean, the only 2 weeks this season he didn't get double-digit targets. He got 9 targets, which he caught all 9 of them against Dallas, and
Beast.
7 targets against Seattle, where he caught 5 for 54 and a touch. So he's been super safe, and one of these weeks, yeah, he'll let people down, but if you're chasing that, you're gonna be disappointing yourself more often than not.
Probably true. And then the Patriots receivers round out the top projected ones as of Wednesday. Again, remember, this very early look, and a lot of our ownership projections change by Sunday morning. But Mohamed Sanu, who is dealing with an ankle injury and missed practice today, so we'll check on him. But Julian Edelman in a matchup with the Cowboys, he just missed our underperforming receiver list too. I like him in this spot a lot, so I see why he's high projected on receiver.
Totally. And tight ends, Zach Ertz, Darren Waller, and don't look now, but it's Jared Cook.
That goes to show the state of the tight end position this week. Like Jared Cook rounds out the top 3. I don't, I'm not like thrilled with any of these three, but it's hard to argue with Ertz's volume, especially with the injuries at the receiver position. So, pretty fair assessment.
Yeah, I mean, he's projected close to 9 targets, and it makes sense that he'll be the, I think, tight end that's going to be most popular. What about defenses?
Steelers against the Bengals are going to be popular. The Bears are going to be pretty popular in this spot, as well as the Browns, of course, against the Dolphins. One thing I did read today, I wish I could credit who posted on Twitter, but the Dolphins are very good matchups for a high floor defense. The opposing defense has finished in the top 10 every week, but I think they've only had 1 or 2 top 3 finishes. So whether that's sample size or, they just don't give up huge games, they give up good games to opponents. Maybe Cleveland's a good play in low risk contests, but high risk maybe you're shooting for a higher total game,
Totally.
so something like that.
And I think it kind of speaks volumes to like how volatile defense is, right? Like
Yep.
this week, both the Bears and Steelers are 5K on FanDuel.
Damn.
And I mean, look, the defense that's going to lead the slate is going to be the one that either somehow puts together like 5, 6 sacks and 3 interceptions, or scores multiple times. And that's just sometimes, at least the scoring bit is really hard to predict.
It is. I mean, look at last week. Atlanta was actually a top 5 ranked defense in our model with that matchup in Carolina, and they were super cheap on both sites. And we'll have to see if one of those moves to the top of the model here over the next couple of days.
Let's talk about some sneaky stacks. We know that this is a pretty like strange week, right? Where in a way, like a lot of these stacks are sneaky because other than this Tampa Bay Atlanta game, there isn't much to like really zero in on.
It's not. So I'm gonna give you 3 options here. I want to hear your ideas. So I think the most popular of the 3 I'm about to present is Seattle and Philadelphia. I like Wentz and Wilson in this game. Lots of pass catchers. Aguilar, Ertz on the Eagles side. I know we love to make fun of Aguilar for not catching passes, but dude's getting volume. So I like that. But the 2 I'm really excited about, Dallas and New England, and mostly because the DraftKings pricing algorithm has their New England defense input has just crushed Cowboys prices this week. Dak's like 6K, Amari, Gallup, and Cobb are like nearly season lows, and we've seen that New England's defense is not invincible. And with Dallas's efficient offense, I can see this game shooting out.
Yeah, no, I think all 3 of them are sound options, and I agree about the Dallas Patriots game potentially being a shootout. Keep your eye on the weather. It looks like it could be sloppy, but it's still Wednesday. One stack that I'll throw in there for sneakiness sake is the Jets versus the Raiders. So Sam Darnold just kind of put together 2 pretty decent back-to-back weeks fantasy purposes, and the Raiders traveling to the East Coast. And, you get a lot of guys. Okay, so take Jamison Crowder, what he's done, right? He's been incredibly effective really the last, 3 weeks now. But then you get someone like Robbie Anderson who has big playability. You get guys like Tyrell Williams on the other end, and we know the Jets' run D is a lot stronger than their pass D. Le'Veon Bell, you can't forget about him. There's some interesting ways to approach this game, leaning more on some of the Jets players, but Derek Carr, Tyrell Williams, Sam Darnold, Bell, Anderson, Crowder, even Demaryius Thomas could be interesting.
Yeah, and I think this week is probably a good week not to fully stack. Like if you're playing GPPs or like the larger satellites or larger contests, I don't necessarily know if you need to play 4 guys from one game. Like maybe it is just a 2 from one side, 1 from the other type week because of the low totals and some of the pricing.
Totally, like maybe like a Sam Darnold and Anderson, and then run it back with Tyrell Williams or something.
Right? Yeah, for sure.
No, I agree. So, but keep your eyes posted for the model as ownership projections come in, and we'll try to get sneaky with it.
Yes, sir. And now everybody's favorite segment, the receivers from this list. We always get 1 or 2 blow-up options. John Brown was the big guy last week. He was in both Millionaire Maker winning lineups. So,
Smoke.
Yeah, Smokey Brown. So, all right, Lead, here are the guys this week. Let me hear your thoughts. So, Odell Beckham against the Dolphins, number one underperforming receiver over the last 3 weeks, and in fact over the last like 4 or 5 weeks. This next guy is going to blow everyone's mind, and he's actually the number 2. Johnny Holton. You may say who? From the Steelers. Let me tell you one thing. So Deontay Johnson may miss. Juju's probably going to miss. And if I didn't tell you this, you would never believe this. But last week's game, Johnny Holton came in against the Browns, and he had 195 air yards on 7 targets. He caught one of them for 18 yards. So dude's basically min price, and he's going to be playing the Bengals. So not to sway your decision too much, but that's Johnny Holton.
I mean, 3.3K on DraftKings and 4.9 on FanDuel. So yeah, 1 catch on 7 targets. But hey, if those 2 guys are out, you could do a lot worse.
Yeah, it helps you fit in a lot of expensive guys too. All right, other guys: Nelson Aguilar, who can't catch, but he's on the list. Allen Robinson, we'll see. Much easier matchup this week. Maybe Chase Daniel. Zach Pasquale on Thursday, as you like to say. Pascal. AJ Brown for the Titans. DJ Chark, who despite scoring a touchdown and getting 100 yards last week, still underperforming.
Unreal, dude.
He had like 200.
I thought, with Nick Foles coming back, it could be Westbrook time, but apparently not.
No, Chark had like 15 targets for like 250 air yards last week. Devontae Adams, who may go overlooked at coming off a bye as an underperforming receiver. And then guys who just missed: Julian Edelman, Amari Cooper in that potential shootout, DJ Moore, who's yet to score a touchdown in forever, and then Julio Jones. So thoughts on all those guys, Walid?
Hate them all. No, I'm just kidding. Odell, obviously, right, with that matchup against the Browns, and he's got to go off, right? And no doubt they're going to feature him early and often. Nelson Aguilar, it's kind of the same story where, like, the definition of underperforming, eventually he's going to hit, so high-risk contests, don't count him out. Allen Robinson, the cursed receiver who just, no matter where he goes, there's just a bad quarterback waiting to throw him the ball. But he's made it work. He's made a career out of putting together great games with mediocrity at the home. And, I mean, you can't say enough about DJ Chark, man. Like, this guy has been just so fun to watch, and he'll continue to kind of it's just insane how you can call him underachieving right now.
It really is. I mean, when I saw his name, I had to double check to make sure there wasn't a mistake. But yeah, interesting that he's on this list again. And just for everyone's reference, this list is just to make sure we know what we're talking about. The past couple of games, we look at 3 weeks. Guys who have been seeing a lot of opportunity. So targets, especially air yards, targets near the goal line, high value targets. But their fantasy box scores haven't followed. They haven't caught the passes for some reason. They haven't scored the touchdowns for some reason. And these guys generally are due for blow-up games. I mean, every single week, guys on this list are in the $1 million winning lineup. Yep. So yeah, and what I like about this week too, Walid, is a lot of these guys are facing each other or in game stacks. So you have AJ Brown and DJ Chark in the game, Edelman and Amari Cooper. You have Odell in the Miami game. Like a lot of big options here, and I think especially if you go shorter on the game stacks, like a lot of these guys should be featured in your high risk lineups.
No, I love it. Right, little run it back action with just mini stacks across the board. So. And Devontae Adams does play the Sunday night game, but should be pretty popular on the single game slate.
Yeah, exactly. So consider Devontae as your captain on Sunday night.
That's about it for the Week 11 DFS podcast. Any closing thoughts, Brian?
No, it's going to be an interesting week, like I said. Should be lower scoring. We'll see if that holds true, but be sure to check out, like I said, this is just a first thought. So if you want more in-depth thoughts on this week's DFS slate, be sure to check out OccupyFantasy.com. The daily plug will be up by Friday. Occupy model is up and running, real-time player dashboard that ranks every player, FanDuel, and DraftKings. Twitch stream Saturday night, twitch.tv/OccupyFantasy. We'll run through the slate and answer your questions. And then our boy Chris, who writes the plug, will be up 11 a.m. Eastern Sunday morning on our Twitter at OccupyFantasy, answering your questions in a Periscope Q&A.
Love it. All right, guys. Good luck this weekend, and we'll catch you soon.